It's 18 minutes past the hour of 10. You're welcome back. If you've just joined us, you're watching Business Morning. We're coming to you live from Channels Television in Lagos. The fuel scarcity still persists across the country, and this is an issue that requires urgent attention before it worsens. Now, there are complaints that the marketers are yet to get the over 400 billion naira that was supposed to be paid by the presidency. We hope that is looked into. But let's just expand that a little bit, since we've been joined in the studio by the head of research at EcoBank Development Corporation, also an energy analyst, Mr. Dolapo. Thank you.
Great to be here.
Mr. Oni, for coming on the program. The fuel issue.
Yeah.
We're moving back into that circle again. And it's worrisome, really.
Yeah.
Not at this time. I don't think that is an issue that the present administration should be dealing with. We thought we had gone past it.
Yeah, we thought so. And I mean, it's something I imagined that we probably had passed, sort of averted when NNPC announced that it was going to make that payment. But if you want to face the facts, it wasn't going to be easy to surpass. Why? Because, I mean, if you look at the statistics, between January and July, the government had spent 221 billion naira to pay for fuel subsidies. And this was going to be an additional 413 billion naira, which would have made it that in 2015, the government would have spent about 634 billion on fuel subsidies alone. And then you refer to the budget for this year, which actually contains a fuel subsidy element of about 145 for both gasoline and kerosene. So there's been an overspending of there will be an overspending of roughly about 490 billion if you take that into stats. And of course, that would mean that they had to go back to the Senate to say, look, give us more money to pay for these bills. And the Senate was already asking that, where did you get the extra 70 billion for the 221 you've spent, which had not been sorted out yet. So I knew that this was then going to be an issue. So that's why we're where we are today. So the marketers are worried that they may not get their money. The bankers won't give them new money for them to import products. So they're holding on to what they have.
So we're back to square one?
Essentially.
More like it?
Essentially. We still have about 14 days of supply in terms of what we have in the depots.
The stocks.
Yeah, exactly.
Right
depots and vessels offshore. But except new vessels coming, I think we still have about 2 weeks to hold on to what we have.
And you know, and this brings me to the issue of the PIB. Some people have said perhaps we should have a revised PIB because that bill has suffered in the hands of our legislators, and nothing seems to have been done for the many years that it has been at the National Assembly. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. You see, even it was probably not in the best interest of the PIB that the last administration, before they left, the House of Rep quickly tried to pass the PIB upward, made some small amendments and all that. But the fact is, and I think we must come to the terms, is the fact that the PIB itself as a concept, probably we need to move away from it. I think we've talked about it, we've gone around it a bit too long. We need to probably revisit the whole idea. What are we trying to achieve with the PIB? What do we need right now as a country? Right now as a country, I believe we need to be finding ways to make people invest in the upstream segment, invest to bring and boost oil production so that we can also boost our revenues as well. So, and what do they need for that? They need fiscal terms. They need very clear terms around how much tax the government is going to take from them, how much the government intends for them to invest, and what kind of returns they can make. So, until those kind of clarity is provided, for me, PIB itself as a whole concept, we probably need to move away from that and just focus on what is needed right now, which is starting with the fiscal terms right now to encourage investment into the oil and gas industry.
Okay, let's delve into the power sector.
Yes.
We have a new power minister. You know, that portfolio is quite a very, very heavy one. And when combine that with works and houses, which we'll talk about later on the program, let's look at the achievements in the power sector in the last administration. I know that efforts were made by the past government to ensure that there is the unbundling of the PHCN, of the power. We have the GENCOs and the DISCOs now in operation. But what is your assessment of these steps taken by the past administration? Yeah,
it's a mix, really. There's been some successes, and there's been some challenges as well. I think successes in the fact that we now see a lot more private involvement in the power sector. This is a sector that has purely been in the hand of the government before. So there were a lot of lapses in terms of maintenance, in terms of investment, in several areas. But now in the hands of the private investors who unfortunately have come to receive those assets in very bad states. Most of them have had to spend a lot of time to try and even bring those assets up to where they should have been, you know, and we're not even talking of expanding them yet, but some of them are in fact already making an effort to even expand the assets, for instance, on the generation side of things, that's what I mean, to expand production on those assets. And as we speak today, some of the NIPP projects have been completed. We have more capacity than we can actually put on the transmission network right now. That is the fact on ground. I mean, as at last count was roughly about 7,000 plus megawatts that is available right now that can actually come on, that can be generated and can come on the grid. But the fact is, we have a transmission capacity bottleneck, which is about 5,500 megawatts.
And that has to do with the distribution, somewhat.
That has to do with, no, with the transmission, taking it even, evacuating it even from the various sites. You can evacuate the power. Once it comes on the transmission, the national grid, the national grid cannot take more than 5,000 megawatts, otherwise it collapses. So that even limits what can get to the people on the distribution side of things. And then on the distribution side of also too, there are still issues as well. They've inherited distribution companies, some of them that are quite large. I mean, we have one distribution company that covers like 4 states, another one that covers just a portion of Lagos states, you know. So they have various issues with collection, with power theft, with sabotage by ex-PHCN workers. That is still making it difficult for us to really feel the impact of the privatization program. But yes, there have been some successes.
Now, how would you want the Honorable Minister to address the issue of transmission, which is very key?
Yes.
Because if we have the capacity to generate so much, but yet we do not have what it takes to absorb it, and perhaps now channel it out to other people to use, there could be a problem, and that takes me to the issue of infrastructure.
Yes.
So the minister has started work. We all believe all of them have started work.
Yeah, he has.
How do you think this issue should be taken care of?
You know, for the incoming power minister, he's someone I believe I'm personally confident that he will try his best to resolve these issues here, because he tends to think in terms of structures and systems. Now, that's really what we want in the power sector. Now, more importantly, what he needs to try and focus on is in attracting investment. Now, for you to attract investment, it's a value chain. Investors have to be able to have a very clear line of sight to the incomes. Now, you can't expect someone to come and put money into transmission if you won't have very clear, sight to how will my revenues be received. What kind of guarantees will I be getting? So, to some extent, I mean, for instance, for transmission particularly, some form of government guarantees will be involved. That probably won't be negotiable. And then to some extent as well too, there has to be some ability to lay some claims on some of the revenues that will be coming from either from the discos to some extent. Now, that's one way. The other way will be for immediate solutions would be the route of embedded power, which we've been discussing for a while, which would be that we'd have to have some smaller plants sited within the distribution networks themselves, so that within the distribution area, the power is generated and distributed locally, so that the revenues can be ring-fenced
in a particular area.
In a particular area. So, for instance, in Ikeja Disco, you have a power company that generates power within Ikeja Disco and distributes within Ikeja, so that first of all, that load doesn't have to go to the national grid.
Do we have the infrastructure to do that?
Yeah, on the distribution side of things, I believe we can possibly distribute a lot more power than the national grid can transmit to the distribution networks at the moment. So and that's why embedded came up as a concept, and I think that's one route to go in the short term. But on the longer term, what really needs to be focused on is expanding that national grid capacity, taking it beyond 7,000, 8,000 megawatts, and then other solutions such as off-grid solutions. Now, there's a lot of disbursement in Nigeria. Not everybody can be fully connected to the grid. So to some extent, we have to also consider off-grid solutions. People talk about mini grids, off-grids. Those are solutions that will also need to come in. But more importantly, setting up a structure that attracts investors, that enables them to see how they will be funded, how they will be, how they will receive their returns on their investment, is clearly what is needed.
The issue of renewable energy has been in the news for a very long time, and I think that experts like yourself are saying perhaps the minister should begin to look towards that area. Do you think so?
Yeah, I'm still, I mean, at the risk of sounding controversial, honestly, I'm not a big fan of bringing up the subject of renewables for Nigeria for now. And the reason why is because we're still trying to achieve base load. renewable as a concept is interesting because, again, we're talking about climate control, climate changes, and we're trying to also be a part of that involvement, of that movement. But at the moment, we haven't even achieved the base load required to sustain our economic growth.
The foundation required to expand.
So, and the problem with renewable tends to be that, okay, the power supply from renewable tends not to be consistent, it fluctuates, so all sorts of issues come with renewables, but it's important and we need to introduce it even if in small quantities.
Now, do you think that the World Bank should support Nigeria's power sector? I know that for Lagos State, we've been a lot of World Bank intervention in terms of funding. You know, with the Lagos State government, even under the former governor, Fashola himself, had gone to the World Bank, to get money to fund a major capital projects like the power for Lagos. IPPs, we have a number of IPPs here. But do you think that would be a good sort of avenue to generate funding for Nigeria's power sector?
No, definitely. The World Bank will be involved, will have to be involved. And I think when you look at the size of Nigeria and the market here and what the potential could be if power is actually sorted, I mean, it's something I believe the world, that's really core to what the World Bank is trying to achieve around the world. So yes, there will be, but it will be in cases where they can find the right sort of structure, like the Azura, where they were involved, and other projects as well. All
right, Dolapo, so much to let us let us know. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Dolapo Oni is a research analyst, of course, the head of research at EcoBank Development Corporation, and energy expert, talking about the power sector for Nigeria. Of course, Mr. Fashola should be listening and, of course, take the necessary steps to ensure that our power sector in the country as a whole gets better. Still to come after the break, we're still continuing with the state of the economy. Of course, we're shifting focus right now to the works and housing sector. We'll be right back.